In this series of talks in chapel, we'll be asking and answering the hard questions such as, how do we know the Bible is true and reliable? Did the miracles really happen? How do you know that Jesus rose from the dead? Today, does God exist? How do you prove that God exists? Is there an intellectual basis for believing in God, or is it being religious just a matter of faith? Christianity invites scrutiny into its claims and its reasons for having faith, and these deserve examination. Atheism is the belief that there is no God. It is the belief that there was nothing, and nothing happened to nothing, and nothing magically exploded for no reason, creating everything, and then a bunch of everything magically rearranged itself for no reason whatsoever into self-replicating bits, which then in turn turned into dinosaurs. Does that make perfect sense? I don't think so. Some people feel that acceptance of God is entirely a matter of faith. But the scriptures actually claim that it is the truth which is the basis for this faith. Truth is only truth if it is objective truth. That is, it is true for everyone, regardless of time or consequences. So in Romans 10 verse 17 says, consequently faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word of Christ. Truth is true for everyone, regardless of time or circumstances. Thus, God is either true, and there can be objective proofs to support this, or he is not true, and only subjective truth can be offered for proof. Christians have often been accused of blind faith. The idea seems to be that they hold to a set of beliefs even when there's no evidence for them. Arguing with such people is impossible. Show them reasons why God does not exist, for example, and they'll simply brush them aside with a glib, well, you just have to take it on faith. Not only is this irrational, they are incredibly annoying. In Psalm 19 we read, the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. What we see in the night sky is giving us evidence that we should take notice of. When we see stars above us, we are finding out something about God. It is proof. The stars are not an excuse for making up unfounded religions. The stars are not there to be worshipped. The stars are not there as some sort of predictor of our lives, as the sad astrology that is in all the papers and magazines tell us. The stars, it says here, declares or shouts out and gives God the glory. The stars display knowledge. So what do we know from them? Let's see how that works. In Romans chapter 1, verse 20, we find a key verse. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. Finding proof means looking for supporting evidence in the natural world to support this supernatural claim. In other words, as we look at the world around us, we find evidence that points towards God, who is powerful and creative. Creation is evidence to support the fact of a creator, and design in creation is evidence that supports the fact of a designer. The basis of proof. Proof demands reasonableness, not certainty. For a claim to be reasonable, it must be coherent. In other words, it must consistently agree with reality. For example, all life on Earth is subject to gravity, this is consistent with the reality we live in. Also, it must be logical. So it has a premise and an assertion and a conclusion that shows that the assertion matches both the premise and the conclusion. For example, premise: all men are mortal. Assertion: the Prime Minister is a man. Conclusion: therefore, the Prime Minister is a mortal. This is a true premise and a true assertion leading to a true conclusion. Thirdly, it must be likely. That is, it must be more likely to be true than not. For example, Mr. Macaulay has 4 children and is likely not to have any more children. So, what would have to occur, or to have occurred, to constitute for you a reason to at least consider the existence of a superior mind? It's a good question. Or to put it another way, if you saw conclusive proof, would you believe? Christina, my youngest daughter, turned 4 yesterday. Wouldn't it be incredible that the bike that just evolved by natural processes, imagine that, all the metal was heated up by random processes and then randomly molded into the right shapes. The rubber tires that just happened to make a circular shape with an inner tube with just the right amount of air pressure in them. The tassels on the side just randomly collected by the passing wind and stuck firmly into the side of each handle. Then there was the amazing act of camouflage as the bike magically was painted pink with Barbie logos. This bike was cleverly put together, let me tell you. I made sure that the nuts were tightened to just the right amount of tension. I made sure that the handlebars were straight before being fixed in place. This bike is evidence of there being a designer. That wasn't me, by the way. And evidence of there being a builder who assembled it. That was me. It is also evidence of love. The details of making sure it is exactly right were because I love my daughter. If I didn't love her, then I wouldn't care too much. The training wheels might have been at the wrong height, the handlebars might have been crooked, but the details give evidence of her parents' love for her. Now imagine you are walking along a bush track, just relaxing and kicking stones, and you come to a rocky outcrop overlooking a valley. Imagine that you saw on the ground a watch, one of the older ones that wind up. Now, you probably think of a lot of things at this point. You might think of someone who had just walked that way, had just dropped the watch accidentally on the ground. You might even think that the owner is someone who is fairly old, since most people these days carry mobile phones. You might think about picking it up. You might think about finding the owner or perhaps slipping it into your pocket. But it would never occur to you to think the same things about the rock you're walking over. That's because you know that the watch didn't just happen, but it was made by someone, bought by someone, and now lost by someone. You know that the watch was cleverly designed and carefully made. But you wouldn't think that about the rocks you're walking over or the stone you just kicked. The universe is like that watch. The universe has order and purpose and regularity. The fact that living organisms and systems display evidence of design is now beyond dispute. The universe displays an amazing complex level of interdependency, which logically leads to the conclusion that it was designed that way. There are just too many coincidences of such just rightness for it to be a random, haphazard coincidence. The Earth is just the right distance from the Sun. It contains just the right mixture of chemicals and gases to sustain life. Humans have just the right ability to breathe these gases, and the human body has just the right synergy of internal organs in order to function, and so on and so on. Some parameters are necessary for a planet to sustain complex life. Gravity on the surface of the Earth is one of those parameters. If it was any stronger, the planet's atmosphere would retain huge amounts of ammonia and methane. If any weaker, the planet's atmosphere would lose too much water. The distance from the Sun. If it was any farther away, it would be too cool for a stable water cycle. If it was any closer, it'd be too warm for a stable water cycle. The thickness of the Earth's crust. If any thicker, then there would be too much oxygen that would be transferred from the atmosphere to the crust. If any thinner, volcanic and tectonic activity would be too great. Carbon dioxide and water vapor levels in the atmosphere. If they are any greater, then there'd be a runaway enhanced greenhouse effect that would develop. If any less, then there'd be insufficient greenhouse effect for life on Earth. The ozone level in the atmosphere. If it was any greater, surface temperatures would become too low. If any less, surface temperatures would be too high, and too high UV radiation would be at the surface of the Earth. Atmospheric discharge rate of electricity. If it was any greater, then there'd be too much fire destruction. If it was any less, then there'd be too little nitrogen fixing in the soil and plants would die out. Seismic activity. If it was any more seismic activity, then the destruction of too many life forms would occur. If any less, then the nutrients on the ocean's floors would not be affected. You're about to see a picture of the Crab Nebula. It is a 6 light-year wide, expanding remnant of a star's supernova explosion. Chinese astronomers recorded this violent event nearly 1,000 years ago in 1054. It's amazing and beautiful and terrifying because of its power. The Milky Way. This is the galaxy that we belong to. It's called the Milky Way. And you might recognize the formation of the Southern Cross and the two pointers. Our galaxy is really beautiful. We can't see all of it at once because we're in it. If we could see it all at once, it would look like a big whirlpool. It's a shape that we call a galaxy. This is not our galaxy, the one on the screen, but one with the name M81. I think they just ran out of names. But our sun would be too small to see, and it is at the edge of one of the arms of the spiral. This is really important because if we're any closer to the center of the galaxy, we would be pulled around by all the gravity of the other stars and we would not survive. The vastness of the universe demands a powerful designer. If the sun were hollow, it could contain over 1 million Earths, yet there are stars that can contain 500 million of our suns. Our solar system is 100,000 light years in diameter and revolves at the speed of 320 kilometers per second, yet it takes 200 million years to make one revolution. Our galaxy is made up of 100 billion stars, of which our sun is just one little speck in our Milky Way. This complex of galaxies, the Hickson compact group, is one that's relatively close together. Other galaxies are outnumbered in the hundreds of millions in known space. In fact, Einstein once said, "We have probed only 1/1000th of teleological space." And if that is true, then there are an estimated 10 octillion, that's 28 zeros, stars in the universe. Those are the 3 galaxies of the Hickson compact group of galaxies. This zoo of galaxies was taken with the Hubble Space Telescope orbiting the Earth. They used very sophisticated equipment to make very accurate and clear pictures of what we would see as just black empty sky. You can see a bright red star in the middle of the picture. Most of the other shapes that seem like blurry spots or egg-shaped blobs are each a different galaxy. And this is just looking in one direction. This is repeated every direction you can point a telescope. The universe is huge. You and I live as though this was not true. We get up each day not really understanding that this is a really, really big universe and that it has been designed for a purpose. So what's the purpose? From the smallest molecule to the largest supernova, the creation speaks. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. The purpose of this amazing universe is to declare God's glory. Every day, even when you can't see it, although someone on the other side of the world can, and every night, the thousands of stars, the galaxies that are unbelievably large, the unknown number of planets all speak. The glowing nebula, the dark nebula, they all give knowledge. God did this so that they would seek him, yet he is not far from you. God promises you can find him when you search for him with all your heart. So seek the Lord while he is available to you. Look around and see his world. Call out to him soon. Going back to Romans chapter 1 verse 20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. Creation shows that the designer is eternal and powerful and awesome and really big and is able to make something so grand and amazing. And he holds it all. He upholds it all. The evidence is overwhelming. And that is without even looking at the amazing way he designed you, your body systems, and the way you think and act have all been designed intricately to work together in harmony. The same God of the universe is the one who created you. What more evidence do you need? Well, we'll show you some more evidence in the form of testimony.
I can see God working in my life. I've seen God work in my life in the past, and when I'm going through something tough or something bad, sometimes I can't see God in it, and I question where God is, but afterwards I can look back and say, yes, I can see how he was working in my life and what he was doing. And even when really bad things happen, like when my mum died, I was really upset, and I couldn't see how God was working in it, but as I look back, I could see that God was really working in my life during that time.
The God of the universe is the same one who said, "Cast all your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous fall." The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust him. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Is he able? Yes. Is he willing? Yes. Does he care for you? Yes. So come to our Creator, our Designer, our Maker, in awe and wonder. We are amazed at the beauty of his creation. We are amazed at his attention to detail. We are amazed and overwhelmed by his power. But that's nothing compared to the size of his love. As we will see in this series, God is great. He is greater than your needs. He is greater than your problems. He is greater than your longings. He knows what is right for you and is offering an invitation to come. Are you willing to trust him? He holds the universe in his hands, the world in his hands, your life in his hands.